And we're having now this contact tracing being introduced, which is just another way of justifying the expansion of mass surveillance on a level we've not even seen before, or they've seen in China, which is what is happening. China is becoming the rest of the world. And here we have teachers' unions, and in America, I've written about this in the new book. Teachers' unions have been absolutely taken over by people driving the cult agenda for children and perception manipulating education. Anyway, these are teachers' unions, schools unions, as they call them here, in England, which and I've added a bit to the headline. Useless elite absorbed school unions say schools can't open until pupils and population are tracked. And I've added, if they had a brain cell, it would die of loneliness. The list of key measures, this article said, must be met before pupils in England can safely return to their desks, teaching unions have told the government. It includes extra money for deep cleaning and personal protective equipment, and local powers to close schools if clusters of coronavirus infections break out in a particular area. Schools must not open until a UK-wide rollout of a track and trace scheme that would help pinpoint those who need to be in quarantine is underway. And it says here a contract tracing phone app is currently in its early stages of being trialled on the Isle of Wight, where I live. Funnily enough, you're going to be shocked. I'm not involved in it. I don't carry a mobile phone, so they can stick that as well where the sun don't shine. Now, the trades unions, they used to represent the interests of working people. You'll remember that if you have a colossally good memory. It was published by the Trades Union Congress, the TUC, who banned one of my meetings because one of my showings of the movie Renegade, because they said we believe in exclusivity, and so they excluded me. I mean, these people are not giant intellects. I think it's fair to say that. It called for clear scientific published evidence that trends in transmission of COVID-19 will not be adversely impacted by the reopening phase, and that schools are also safe to reopen. So the teaching unions are on board with tracking people. You see, the unions are supposed to, they once appeared to stand for freedom a long time ago, but no more. Just like the Labour Party, which was an outgrowth in Britain from the trade union movement, is in no way protecting the rights of working people anymore. And here we have a story related to this. Teachers want kids disinfected at school gates amid fears of enforcing social distancing. So not only now are you having kids standing in boxes in the playground, unable to go near other kids, but they've got to be disinfected at the school gates. And the teachers are, most of them quite happy with that. And teaching unions are driving it, as they are in America. It's unbelievable. School teachers used to be a vocation, but the nature of everything has changed because the nature of the people that are appointed into these positions has changed. It must be a nightmare today to be a genuine teacher who cares about the kids, and cares about the kids' freedom, and cares about not programming them. And they do exist, but it must be a nightmare going into work every day, into school every day, and having to work within a system that insists that they do all the things they do not believe in, and are often surrounded by other teachers who are quite happy to do them because they're as programmed as they want to program the kids. It's the same with the police. There are still many genuine, decent police officers trying to do the right thing. There was a video this week of one in America who was speaking out against the way the police are trampling over freedoms. And it went, quote, viral, as they say. And now they've suspended him because he refuses to take it down. And this is leading to, it seems, dismissal altogether. So there are decent police officers too, as there are decent teachers. But again, being a police officer who believes in freedom, justice, decency, fairness, and all such things, it must be a nightmare. Working in the police institutions now that are seeking to, on behalf of the cult, delete all of those things. And around them will be many, many people who have been hired specifically because of their idiocy and psychopathy, sometimes one or the other, sometimes both, so that they will impose these draconian laws and regulations. While all this has been going on, all this economic mayhem, the computer models by a guy called Neil Ferguson, who's since resigned for breaking his own lockdown rules by having his married girlfriend visit him. His computer models, which were the foundation of why the lockdowns were imposed, he provided the excuse, and he's Gates funded, so it wasn't an accident that he did that. Clearly, people have started looking at his background and his models, and found them to be catastrophic. His models were unfit for purpose. Well, they were unfit for purpose as, quote, modeling the dangers from the, quote, virus. Up to 500,000 dead in Britain, up to 2 million dead in America if their countries weren't locked down, he said. But they're unfit for purpose. They're unfit for purpose in terms of basic computer modeling, and unfit for purpose in terms of what they said. But they are and were absolutely fit for purpose. If you were Bill Gates, who funds this guy, who wants to justify lockdown for his sinister, deeply sinister, evil motives. And Neil Ferguson is someone else who should be going to jail for much of the rest of his life for crimes against humanity. So this is an article looking at his history. A chastened Neil Ferguson, I don't think he's chastened. I don't think he has chastened in his capacity to manifest. A chastened Neil Ferguson this week admitted his error of judgment in allowing his married lover to visit him at home, in a flagrant breach of the lockdown rules that stem in large part from his own research. Flesh is frail, and if the 51-year-old professor's trysts with blonde Antonia Stats, 38, were his only error of judgment, many would forgive him. But the career of this all-too-influential scientist has been marred by frequent questions about his modeling. And the way to understand Ferguson and his modeling is to look at the consequences of governments acting on his modeling. That's where the key truth lies. and the key revelation lies. From foot and mouth disease to swine flu and BSE, Ferguson has reliably popped up to brandish complex forecasts featuring terrifying death tolls, models that hold ministers in thrall. Now his critics argue that his predictions around coronavirus, which were crucial in persuading the government to impose the lockdown that is crippling our economy and causing untold social damage, could prove to be his most controversial yet. On March 16th, Ferguson and his team at Imperial College London, owned by the cult, published a now famous paper claiming the coronavirus was so deadly that more than 500,000 Britons could die if nothing was done to tackle it. About 250,000 would perish, they added, if the government maintained its then policy of social distancing without a lockdown. Other researchers made the same prediction. That very day, Boris Johnson told the nation to keep out of pubs, restaurants, and other crowded places, and a week later orders all to remain at home except in specific circumstances. So how have Ferguson's predictions fared? In early April, Swedish scientists ran Ferguson's model to try to predict the death toll in the Scandinavian country if the government there chose to avoid lockdown, which of course they have in Sweden. And so what they found is that by the beginning of May, the model predicted that 40,000 Swedes would be dead, rising to 96,000 by the end of June. The Swedish government pressed ahead without a lockdown, but maintaining social distancing, the same approach that the government has been taking, it says here, since until Ferguson published his paper. So we were basically following the Swedish model of reaction until this paper from Ferguson. Funnily enough, as I'm looking down this, that's why I hesitated there. I'm seeing that his married lover, a German called Antonia Statz, handing in a petition to 10 Downing Street, 1 million petition saying end fossil fuel subsidies. So she's obviously part of the climate movement. And she's wearing a t-shirt which says avaz.com. Avaz is featured in my new book. It's one of the front organizations that is what they call astroturf organizations, that's been funded by people like Soros to promote the cult agenda. How interesting. So the article goes on. Have 40,000 Swedes died? No. Yesterday, the country's death toll stood at 2,941, and that's death toll for a virus they've never isolated and therefore can't test for. Ferguson, it has emerged, made several highly questionable assumptions. He assumed that 0.9% of all those who were infected with the disease would be killed by it. That figure was revised down at the end of March by Ferguson's Imperial College colleague, Robert Verity, to 0.66%. Many scientists believe it is a lot lower still. Try zero. Oxford University's Centre for Evidence-Based Medicine put the mortality rate at between 0.1 and 0.26%. Ferguson also assumed that 2/3 of infected people would experience symptoms and therefore realized they should self-isolate. Yet the Chinese study published in the British Medical Journal on April the 2nd suggested that 78% infected with the virus show no symptoms whatsoever. So it goes down a list of assumptions that Ferguson made in his computer model. And this is really important because everything that's happened since is because of this. He's assumed a series of things which he put into the computer, which the computer processed and then played out the projections. But the projections were based on wrong assumptions. This is why computer models are useless, because they're all based in their outcome on the input by the person running them. In this case, Ferguson, owned by Gates, who wanted a lockdown. Dear. You know, I was going to say you couldn't make it up, but you know, they have. Um, and you see, the official story, the official narrative coming out of the Gates-owned World Health Organization is so full of holes and so destroyable. The only way they can protect it is by extreme levels of censorship, of people exposing what's going on. That's why I've been banned from YouTube. That's why I've been banned from Facebook, and you know, Twitter will probably follow at some point.